Well, thanks for jumping on, Rob.
Thanks
It's
for,
nice to
yeah,
meet you. I've just wanted before we get into it. This is a total vibe cast. Brian and I call it our vibe cast. We have absolutely zero structure, zero plan. We just chat and enjoy ourselves and leverage off each other's learnings.
yeah,
So
yeah,
and that's the way we like it. And it's been going. It's great. It's great. It's great for us. I love it. It's sort of like my favorite part of my fortnight, catching up on all the latest and greatest stuff that's going on out there in the tech world or anything that's relevant to us.
yeah. I'm excited. I'm happy that you guys were interested and willing to have me on. So, yeah, I'll see if I can hold up my end of the deal here.
It's
So,
Absolutely.
fascinating to have a third voice in this.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure you're going to bring some interesting perspective into
yeah,
this discussion.
In
yeah.
our vibe casting era, you're our first guest. So
Ooh, wow.
yeah,
Well, I'm. Let's put it this way. I speak Vibecast. I definitely do that. So,
great.
I'm compatible with that with your operating system.
When I started out on my Power BI journey, I your blog post and your book, your first book that you wrote, might not have been your first book, but your book on DAX in
Hmm.
particular was quite influential in my conviction that Power BI was going to be a big thing because it was quite early days when I really got into it, and I was
Hmm.
using it within an organization, and I thought, okay, this is absolutely the future. And then you had a lot of conviction, which I really liked. I really liked that you had a lot of conviction, and you were like, this is going to be big. This is going to be the evolution of Power Pivot, no doubt about it. And yeah, no, I think it was at that time very influential in my own decisions to sort of go all out into the Power BI world.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, I did have a lot of conviction, and that was unusual for me.
Mm.
Like I was always at Microsoft, like I was always the one kind of like sitting back, going like, okay, come on, but what we're doing is absurd, right? Like, like the there was always like a good like 50% of every team I was on that was just like full on patriotic about whatever it was we were doing. And I was always hanging back going like, yeah, I don't know. Right. You know, like, uh, and it was, so for me, it was quite, and I was also used to doing a lot of like version one stuff. Like, I'd done that dance a few times at Microsoft, and I'd seen the curve, like the Gartner curve of the hype cycle. I'd seen that in practice with the things we would our ambitions at the beginning of a project would just be like super high. Like this could change the world. And like one of the projects I was on that had that sort of attitude going in never even released, like never even like just canceled the project.
Mm.
After 2 years. And so I didn't I expected Power Pivot to be kind of more like the Gartner curve, you know? Uh, and when I started using it like for real, like testing it like as an outsider as opposed to like as a member of the product team, I was stunned
Mm.
at how good it was. Like it rocked me. And
Mm.
it changed the way I looked at the world. And so like, there's perhaps no more effective high priest than someone who's been a skeptic their whole life, you know? I found the first thing I believed in. And so, yeah. And
That's great.
so
So
I'm
Rob,
gratified to hear that.
I was going to ask you about that. That kind of how do you think that experience has has shaped kind of your views of AI and kind of the big move into kind of where we currently are?
Well, I gotta admit that like most people, and you've seen this, Brian, like not understanding it, not having like an intuitive sense of its capabilities as well as its limitations, its edge cases, like it's just this genie that like when you look at it from the outside, you don't know what size box it fits in, what size box, what shape box, is there even a box, right? Is it are there any limits to it at all? And so it's very hard to wrap your head around uh, until you've gotten some visceral experience with it. Um, so I I definitely, if you rewind like, a few months for me, I was definitely in the camp of AI is a big deal, right? AI is disruptive. Like, and all the posts you see, there's sort of like two flavors of posts you see like on social media. Like one says, and they're both intended to elicit an emotional reaction. One of them is like, well, if you're not already doing X, Y, and Z, like you're doomed. Like that kind of like make people fearful content. And then the other kind of content is people pushing back on that, saying, I've seen this all before. It's no big deal. This thing isn't as smart. It's just all hype. Everyone just calm
Right.
down. All the projects fail, you know, and it's almost like humanity is only capable of assimilating like binary, crisp, black and white outcomes because that's all that we get fed. Uh,
Mm.
Heaven help you being, one of in the middle. But I was very much in the camp of this is very disruptive. Uh, Even when I didn't have a great sense of it yet. Now that I've gotten a much, much, much clearer sense of what it is and what it isn't.
Mm.
And I credit, Brian, some of the things you and I have been exploring together, like we've been running into, like running off the edge of certain things and everything. Like it's been really, really
Yeah.
helpful. Um, Now I think I'm prepared to. The punchline here is that I am now in the last week and a half, even. I'm feeling the same level of excitement about this stuff that I felt about PowerPivot and Power BI 15 years ago. And
Mm.
I haven't experienced that kind of excitement about tech since then.
Mm.
I have that same sort of energy, that same sort of like, oh, okay, right? Like let's go. And I can help people uh and it feels like an old friend, an older version, a previous version of me has like come back in a way, right? Like, oh, I remember this guy, right?
Yeah.
And it feels really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. I have kind of a similar experience in terms of that I had a long period in my career where I was managing and I wasn't doing a lot of analysis. And when I call that my kind of my Rip Van Winkle period. And I was managing analysts and people doing this stuff, but I wasn't, the most I'd ever do is like a complex budget in Excel. And this is coming from a career of doing econometrics and all sorts of complex analysis, and I really missed it. And I came back, and the thing I came back right into was Power
Yeah,
BI,
yeah.
and it was the perfect. And actually, yeah, Sam was talking about the book.
Yeah.
This is the
So,
first Power BI book I ever had. That
yeah, me too.
that's the book that got me started, um. And I remember just being incredibly excited about, the possibilities of the tool. And that's only ever happened to me four times in my career. That it was when I first saw spreadsheets,
Okay.
because I'm old.
Yeah.
I think I'm older than both you guys, and I'm old enough to remember when my dad used to come home from work and work on his divisional budgets on graph paper,
Hmm.
um,
Did
and
he
he'd
have
spread
an
it out on the
X-Acto knife? Like,
yeah.
if you needed to erase past a certain, you erase too many times, and now you just got to cut the paper out and tape another piece of paper behind. Bill Jelen, Mr. Excel, has told me about this. Like Bill has done manual spreadsheets in his career,
Wow.
uh, and like just unreal.
Oh, we had this huge kitchen, we had this huge dining room table, and my dad would literally tape graph paper together so that it was big enough
Hmm.
to do the budget on. And I remember when he brought home it was VisiCalc. And the first time
Yeah.
I saw that, we were like, this is magic. Where you could hit one cell and it would change everything. And it was just like we were just agog at that. And then I remember when R came out, and it was like, wow, this is free. This is, this can do anything. And then Power BI, and it's really AI that's for me the fourth thing that felt like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
I missed spreadsheets when they when they were debuted. I do remember that most of the if you go back and you look at most of the advertising for PCs, because the PC was new too. The PC hadn't
Right.
mainstreamed everywhere. But if you go back and look at most of the actually all of the PC ads from that era, they all are showing spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are the thing that's on the computer. The spreadsheets are the reason to have a computer. Like all of the
Right.
like, even like the Charlie Chaplin like PS2 ad for IBM, where they were trying to retake the PC market after they lost it. Like
Yep.
he's the Charlie Chaplin actor is doing spreadsheets on the computer, like it was the reason um
Mm.
to have a computer. So I made that connection. Like I thought Power BI was as big a deal relative to Excel, relative to spreadsheets, as spreadsheets had been to pen and paper spreadsheets, right? Like for the types of tasks
Yeah.
that it was doing, it was like that level of leap. And so I made that analogy a number of times. I missed the
Mm.
R thing. I'm still not an R aficionado. I wouldn't even be able to recognize R, a fragment of R if you showed it to me. So,
Mm.
um, so I guess I'm really only two. I've only had two moments of that level of excitement, and I'm experiencing the second one now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite similar. Yeah, I was the same on Power BI because I was so deep into Excel and VBA and into that world, and I was quite good at it. I'd spent years learning it and mastering VBA the old way through forums
Hmm.
and writing a lot of stuff. And I remember I was trying to build automated presentations through Excel using VBA and yeah,
Yeah.
and
Pitch decks,
yeah,
right?
I was trying to do it automatically and connecting
Yeah.
PowerPoint and all this kind of stuff. And then Power BI came out. I was like, this just solves everything. This solves
Yeah.
everything that I was trying to do. And it was just so obvious. It was so obvious. The calculation engine was far superior. It was the complexity level dropped so much, so much. There's actually in that book that there was a paragraph. I was reading it on my iPad, and there was a paragraph that I highlighted. It was your your highest conviction paragraph of it was going to be a big thing because I was at the time I left salary. My parents weren't happy that I was trying to start my own thing, and I had a baby on the way, and so I was like, I need some reassurance here. I mean, I was like my conviction was pretty high, but and I wanted to do something a bit more entrepreneurial, but yeah, it was. I mean, it's always good to get to read some affirmation, that someone in the tent actually believes it as well.
Yeah. It was funny. I got into um a lot of like online arguments over this stance. It was not well received by the existing guard.
That's how I feel
Um,
about AI.
yeah,
AI, right? I've felt that way
yeah,
about AI for like a year.
yeah. I mean, and so like Brian, like I know that like some of your takes draw some fire. I used to, you know, when I was more of a public figure, I used to draw quite a bit of of fire from various quarters. And I don't think I always handled it super gracefully, and I wasn't terrible about it, but um, like I mean,
It's hard.
if I could,
It's
I
not
could time
easy. It's
travel
not
back,
easy.
yeah, if I could time travel back and tell my prior self, I'd be just like, just relax. All of this, all of this is gonna settle itself out, and all those people, and like I won't name, some of the individuals I have in mind, but some of those people who are most critical of me are now like public faces of Power BI, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
they're just they are
Yeah.
so in,
Yeah.
uh, and and like and there wasn't like some moment where they circled back and like I was given a medal for being right about that, and it didn't matter. It just didn't
Mm.
matter, and so like
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I remember going to a meeting pretty early on when Power BI was quite new, and it was a big realization for me. I went into this meeting and I met the head of IT. I was trying to sell them some training on Power BI, and they basically just came back to me and said, "Why do we even need this? We've got SSRS. We don't need this.
yeah,
We don't need
yeah,
this. We've got Excel, got SSRS." And I mean, it was pretty early. It was pretty early. And it was at that time I realized, man, I don't want to sell Power BI. That's Microsoft's job. I just want to I
Yeah.
want to go and find people who actually believe,
Yeah.
it's a much easier way to succeed here than trying to like sell actual Power BI to everyone because everyone's sort of stuck in their ways and they don't want to change in
Yeah.
a lot of cases until it's just like damn obvious.
Yeah. Where a topic where nerd stuff intersects really tightly with psychology is exactly that. So like in 2010, I went to like the premier Microsoft BI user group in the United States. At the time, it was the most active one. Maybe it's still true. It was the one in Minneapolis.
Mm,
And I was invited to speak there. And I went and spoke there about PowerPivot. And basically the purpose of like the focus of my talk was contrasting it with SSAS multidimensional, the old version of SSAS, and all the reasons why this was better. It's going to be higher tempo and all these sorts of things. And it was a big room. I know, a packed house, like 100 people in there. And afterwards, I, I talked to the sponsor of the group, and we both sort of shared the same reaction, which like it's sort of like people were just glazed over. I was like, I was, no one was really following it. And I said, well, so what's up with that? He said, okay, so I should have warned you. This is a Microsoft BI group, right? But this room doesn't understand SSAS. Like it might as well have been labeled an SSRS user group. Like
right.
that's what MSBI meant to this room. And like, and even to this day, right? Like, um, the reason Tableau has lost so much market share to Power BI isn't because, isn't for the right reasons. It's not because people woke up to, oh, right, I need a dimensional model with multiple fact tables. I need that level of flexibility, that brain underneath the dashboards. No, it's not that. It's because Power BI looks close enough to Tableau and is a lot less expensive. Like that's why it's that's why it's paved the world. Um, and even at Tableau, right? Like they have these advanced features, like they're trying to like back their way into sort of something a little bit more SSAS like. But like even at Tableau, they have a hard time getting traction with this because no one understands, right? Everyone understands storage. I store the data somewhere, and everyone understands SQL, and everyone understands drawing pictures from the rectangle of data that come back from SQL. This concept of a dimensional model with like aggregational calcs, like the whole point of OLAP, is still to this day not really well understood at all. Like it's got very little awareness, and so you'll still see all the time Power BI models. You open up like diagram view, and guess what you see? One wide table or a bunch of tables that aren't connected by relationships at all, because again, that concept hasn't landed on people. Um, and so yeah, like what an uphill battle trying to
Mm,
sell Power BI to that audience at that time. You still wouldn't be able to do it today, right? The
yeah.
reason you do it today is because they go, oh yeah, that is prettier and more interactive, and it's relatively cheap, and everyone else is doing it. That would be the sales pitch, and then you wouldn't have to sell it. It's so funny how the right things can happen for just completely the wrong reasons.
But
Well,
that
I was in government for 3 decades, and I can tell you that, to go outside of Microsoft and Google was almost impossible. That from a CTO, CIO perspective, trying to sell them on, if I'd gone to them and said, I really think we need Tableau, I, it would be 10 years and I still wouldn't have anything on my desk,
Yeah,
you know. But if you go Power BI, they go, okay, we're using Office 365. Let's do a, security review. Microsoft has, FedRAMP certification, and it all goes through pretty smooth. But yeah, I think, that doesn't mean it's the best, but it's certainly from a large organizational standpoint, it's the easy thing to clear.
yeah.
mm. there's no doubt in my mind that Power BI succeeded mostly because you could create a fancy dashboard.
Oh, totally.
And also it had a good calculation engine. But what I also found pretty early on, and when I was out there trying to sell training and sell consulting, is that if you talked about the awesome parts of Power BI like Power Query and DAX, no one got it. No one understood. They understood a fancy dashboard that you could
Right.
click and you could dynamically find insights. That is what sold. That is what
Totally.
people believed
Yep.
in and bought. And that's, I think, the main reason why Power BI was so successful at that time. Obviously, there's a lot of other things around it that made it integrate very well and all that kind of stuff. But I think that was the biggest reason.
Oh, totally. And that's why Tableau became so successful, is because they were the first to really truly effectively market that to the
Yeah.
world. I do
Mm.
think Tableau has did us, the greater society, a huge service by sort of like normalizing the expectation that interactive dashboards were the way and not SSRS reports. Like we needed
Yeah.
something like that to knock us off of the SSRS report, crystal report,
Yeah.
paradigm, which had
Mm.
been just so thoroughly entrenched. It was nothing you could do to get rid of that stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and Tableau made it so that people demanded that.
Mm.
And
The-
PowerPivot didn't deliver it, right? PowerPivot delivered Excel as the front end, and so Tableau was winning against PowerPivot, which is still, in my opinion, a superior product in terms of what it could do.
Yeah.
But you're right that until they got that visual interface, visual dashboard, interactive, clicky clicky interface, they weren't going to break through. Their engine wasn't going to. Their smart engines weren't going to get it done.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good segue. Do you think that is do you think now that that is maybe happening again now? Like, is there a new normal being um, created that might if get everyone out of dashboards or a vast majority of analytics out of dashboards? I know Brian's obviously sort of has been leading the way here, but
Hmm.
it'd be
Yeah.
good to gauge both of you on that.
Well, I mean, um I've been on a bit of a journey on that even before I started to get really comfortable with AI. And on one of our own podcast, actually a series of our own podcast episodes. So like Brian, during your Rip Van Winkle era, Brian, where you were a manager and you weren't doing as much analytics, right? I've been CEO of a company that's now like 60 plus people, and I've got a lot of non play with data job duties.
Right. Right.
Um, but I did build a set of dashboards for my recreational hockey league back when I still lived in Indianapolis. We moved to Seattle the end of last year, moved back to Seattle. And that brought me, first of all, into some really challenging DAX problems that
I've
I'd
seen
never
that report, and
encountered
it's
before.
something.
It is that model is like an outlier in terms of its richness and complexity and
Yeah.
difficulty. Like there were some DAX problems I had to solve that I would have not been able to solve when I wrote that book. And in fact, I don't think it was even solvable because we didn't have variables. Like um, anyway. But it also brought me back face to face with the end consumers of these dashboards in a way that you don't usually get access to. Like even in our consulting business, like we rely on a small number of stakeholders to proxy for the larger user base, right? Um, but with the hockey thing, it was really flat. Like I built it for the league, and so I'd be out like putting my shin guards in the locker room. And somebody asked me a question. Hey, did the dashboards? Can you build a dashboard that shows me this? Right? It's just a fascinating question to be asked, in that environment. And the thing that struck me was that I was very frequently being asked if the dashboards could be, I could add a dashboard to do X, Y, Z, but X, Y, Z was already in there. Like I'd already put it in there, and I'd even gone to the trouble to create like a really Fisher Price menu screen. No navigating tabs. You click here for this, click here for that, right? And giving them names and icons and all kinds of stuff. So did about as good a job as I could in terms of navigation and discovery, and they still didn't know that stuff was there. And it's just like so clear in that moment, like how primitive it is for this person to have a question and have to translate that into this two-dimensional space of, or three-dimensional space if you consider the dashboard tabs the third dimension, like this this like acreage of, they have to find a geographic location in there somewhere that answers that and map that to their question and vice versa.
Mm.
Like like it's just dumb, right? Like once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like, oh, this is a primitive metaphor. It just happened to be the best we had. And so like I've been expecting uh end user AI chatbots as an interface to, you know, Power BI data models, Power BI reports, really since that moment. You know, knowing that it wasn't there yet, but also knowing there's a very solvable problem. You can just sort of tell based on, you know, all the other problems it's able to solve. Of course, we're going to solve this problem. So I've just been waiting on it.
Mm.
And so to show you our level of commitment to this at P3, like last week, we hired one of my former Microsoft colleagues, a guy named Charlie Ellis. He used to work with me on the Excel team. The two of us were leads on the 2007 release. And his entire focus right now is is getting a handle on specifically Microsoft Copilot, but the end user version, which they're calling Chat with Data. I think they're calling it Chat with Data mostly informally because they've got so many copilots, right? Like, I mean, you say Copilot, what do you mean? You say Power BI Copilot, what do you mean? But anyway, um, like that's his focus, is to get us ready to the point where we can confidently or not confidently, you have to confidently recommend it to our clients or confidently steer them in a different direction because I think this is super, super powerful. Like it's going to be the way, and it's going to be the way that things get sold. It's going to be the way that projects get greenlit. Like people will invest in Power BI and build Power BI models for the first time as a means of getting to this experience. You know, it's going to sell, and it's going to sell for the right reasons. And so yeah, we're like we've put an FTE on just on getting to know it, getting to know its limitations, tracking it as it improves, and helping us guide the decision of when it's ready. So yeah, I mean, like not only do I believe it as an opinion, like we're putting money, we're voting with our feet with it. Yeah, like we're in on it. Um,
Nice. What about you,
It's
Brian?
interesting,
What
Rob, when you were
you've
talking.
obviously got some strong views, right?
Well, when Rob was talking, I kind of thought I've always had this view that Power BI, in a sense, is a victim of its strengths, which it sounds like a weird thing to say, but I talk to a lot of people, and that you come across these people who say we have hundreds of dashboards at our company, and none of them get used except for like three or four. And
sure.
then people on top of that will say we have 1,200. I had one guy say they have 3,000 dashboards
Hmm.
in their company. I don't know how big a company it is, but if you've got more than 15, like you've got too many. And what one of the things I've found, because I've done it myself, is Power BI is fun. If you're an analytics geek, Power BI is like an amusement park. I mean, you can do anything with it, and it's fun. It's really fun to build stuff. And so when I came out of this Rip Van Winkle period, I came into it was like I came into an amusement park with like unlimited tickets. And so I just started punching out dashboards to everybody who asked for one. And I had a blast doing it. And the people who asked for it initially were like, this is super cool. And they loved clicking slicers and putting filters in and playing with their data. But in some sense, that just kind of buries you, over time in technical debt. It buries you in terms of, resources to maintain. Your information goes out of date. And I think you really got to have a governance structure, around that first. And, most of the reports, I can look back on creating should never have been reports in the first place. And I think a lot of us who came into Power BI, at that time would look back and say the same thing, that, wow, most of these things were just ad hoc analyses that should never have been publish dashboards. And
Yeah. But there isn't like you never really know. Right? That's the problem, right? You never really know when you're beginning an ad hoc analysis whether that's going to become something ongoing. You're never going to. Some of the best things that you produce that ultimately become like um, a crucial ongoing reference, a crucial ongoing resource people use every day started off as ad hoc, but
that's a good point.
99 out of 100 that started out that way end that way, you
Right.
know. But it's just that you just don't really know at that point in time whether this is going to be a throwaway or not. And so like and like the only way to use them or to produce them or whatever is to put them in exactly the same place and the same, as all the real ones, and
Right.
publish them just like they're real. Like it's so there's no distinction between, oh, this was, and this is true of my hockey dashboards, right? Like that menu tab has 9 or 12 icons on it. There's 12 tabs that you can get to via bookmark hyperlinks, essentially. But there's like 27 report tabs in that thing,
Right. And there's
of all kinds of
tooltips and
throwaway stuff that like an analysis that was like, ooh, what's the record for the most goals scored through the first 4 games of a season? Because like we had a team on a hot streak that season, and I wanted to know if that was a record. It turned out it wasn't. So like, okay, but that report's still in there because you don't want to delete it.
right.
You know, like you're just kind of like, I don't want to kill one of my children. Um, you know, we had the same problem with SSRS. Um, it's almost like uh, you just ended up with yeah, I mean, it's one-off answers pollute the space. Um, I do think, though, a little bit more of an optimistic view that when you design dashboards, and again, I think we're still gonna need dashboards, but all the one-off stuff, um, one-off analysis, and hell, even just finding things in the dashboards that exist, like we need the AI interface for that. Like it's
Yeah.
just that's going to be the way. And anyway, I, one of the worst habits I've had, and it's such a hard habit to break for anyone, is when you sit down to build something for someone, you go from the data forward. You've built this great model, and you want to show them what sorts of things you can answer. Um, and those dashboards almost never end up being all that useful. It's when you work backwards from their workflow and you build them like an advisor or recommendation system that helps power that workflow. And it's kind of weird. As a result, if you do it that way, if you do it in this sort of verb-oriented, action-oriented way, you do end up with more dashboards because you realize that there's a lot more workflows at your company than you ever really thought about. You're trying to build a dashboard that like addresses like all the workflows is like something that sucks at all of the
Yeah.
workflows. It's like um, so like I think in an odd way, like sort of the nirvana state to land in with dashboards is actually with a bunch of them, but each user knows that they only need 3 of them because only 3 of the workflows apply to them.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
Knowing what we know, though, so my question to you guys is, knowing what we know about Power BI, or just my experiences with selling Power BI, right? How much of a competitive advantage or moat is the actual model going forward, right? Like if the interaction for a consumer or a user is just this box on a screen, and then it renders an answer for you, how much are you tied to, say, Microsoft Copilot or
yeah,
anything really, like anything?
yeah,
What, like I've like as an example, I've heard that some people are doing quick analysis using Claude code now.
yeah,
Like so that's sort of my, and I don't actually know the answer because I never, I understood the engine, but I never really like tr I never got too in depth of it that I knew everything about it, but I knew that it didn't actually sell. So I never actually like talked about it with clients and things like that. So if knowing that, right? Knowing that whoever you're selling this next wave of analytics solutions or services to doesn't care about how they actually get the answer, right? how much of an advantage, or how much do you need the model? Like how important is the actual model?
Mm. Well, you've done your homework because this is the topic that you could like throw into the middle of the ring that makes Brian and I like go at it. This is the place where Brian and I like have like the probably the single place where we have like the greatest distance between us in terms
Mm.
of our take on things.
This is the
Um,
Fight Club. Fights go on as
this
long as
this
they
is
have
yeah
to.
this is right.
Right.
And uh yeah, so I think so. Here's a really important historical point for you. Uh, Back when the days of SSAS multidimensional, like go back to like 2007 when the Project Gemini secret skunkworks project that eventually became PowerPivot, which then eventually became Power BI. So Amir Netz started this Project Gemini thing in like around 2007 at Microsoft. And so at that point in time, SSAS multidimensional really was the apex predator of BI in the world. It was the smartest brain and the smartest platform for crunching data in the world for business intelligence purposes anyway. It was the market leader in the OLAP space. It wasn't like an overwhelming leader. It had like it was like sub 50% market share, but there wasn't second place. It was in first, but it was like a 40% market share, and that was first place, right? Um, Microsoft had no official front end, no official user interface for SSAS MD. SSAS MD was a headless product, just an API essentially, just a it's like SQL in a way, like just a database. There was no front end, and Project Gemini was invented in part because Amir had been watching the price of RAM for years and just waiting for the sweet spot, the tipping point where in memory could be viable. Like he'd been waiting, like he'd written like a graduate thesis on this at some point long, like when he was still in school. So he was just watching and waiting and biding his time. So the RAM price is falling below a certain critical level was like, now's my chance type of thing. But the business case for Project Gemini was that um, we're not selling enough servers, enough power, I'm sorry, enough SSA SMD servers because there aren't enough people in the world who know how to program them. There aren't enough people in the world who can write the MDX and design and build these things. I think you'll know this, Sam, the economic theory of complements, um, complementary goods and services. So it's a great metaphor I love to share. Like, let's say that the only use in the entire, the only useful purpose for I don't know what it's called in various countries. We'll say peanut butter. Okay, so the only use of peanut butter is to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That's it. It's the only place that you can use it. Okay, and you sell peanut butter. You're the company that sells peanut butter. So one way to compete is to make the best peanut butter, whatever. But like one of the best ways to expand your market is to make jelly cheaper, the jelly that goes in the peanut butter and jelly. If jelly suddenly becomes 25% as expensive, then the
Mm.
amount of money that it takes to buy a peanut butter and jelly sandwich goes down. And so the effective demand for peanut butter goes up. If you reduce the cost of a complement, the demand for the complementary good goes up, right? This was the
Mhm.
plan. Reduce the cost of the development and configuration of an SSAS server by virtue of making it accessible to the Excel crowd, and we will sell more servers. That was it. They had no, like, they don't care about that 2007 Microsoft didn't care about having a UI. They didn't even have one. In fact, it's so stupid. Like their number one number one UI for SSAS MD was Pro Clarity, and Microsoft bought that and killed it. They took the number one user interface for their product and destroyed it. Like it was like it showed you how what utter disregard they had for user interfaces. It's so bananas, right? Um, and so I think that um, that uh, Microsoft's home field advantage in semantic models is the thing to pay attention to. Like to be distracted by the product known as Power BI is to miss the point, I think, of in predicting where this is going to land. Like
Rob, if I can interrupt
raw,
for just a sec,
yeah,
for the
please,
people,
please, because I
watching,
monologue like crazy. Please
no, no,
interrupt.
for the people watching, one of the things I think is confusing is when people talk about semantic models, they often have slightly different things in mind. So I thought
Sure.
it'd be helpful for you to kind of give your definition when you're talking about this of what you what encompasses a semantic model to
Okay.
you.
All right. So, I mean, in theory, it's the simplest way to say it is it's a PIVX file, PBIX file, where you ignore the report tabs. Um, but in a more like visceral sense, the way I think of it is like a semantic model is where data from multiple line of business systems meets. It's like all the silos of your business come together. It's like a form of middleware where the silos of your business, they don't need to talk to each other. They just need to all land in the same semantic model so you can track like a customer journey from system to system to system as they move through your, right? Or you can track expenses and revenue and all that kind of stuff. And then you enrich that semantic model with calculations that unambiguously express business logic. And relationships between things that show like, what the entity relationships are. So like you just sort of like you start to develop this unambiguous notion of what a customer is and how to track that customer across that journey, that journey across your business, and to have all kinds of semantically meaningful metrics that are custom to your business that no LLM would ever know, right? You know, and it's like it's where raw data, first of all, meets from various silos, which is crucial. But then secondly, where all kinds of semantic meaning and business logic is wired in. As nerdy as it is, them reverting back to calling these things semantic models is really smart because that's what it is. It's data is turning into meaning because of all this metadata, all these annotations. If you think of formulas and relationships as annotations, and they're machine readable annotations that are deterministic and always give the same answer, right? And it's like try succeeding with a chat with data type interface against those raw data sources, and see how far you get. Like, I believe that semantic prep layer is critical.
My quick. I'm keen to get your take, Brian, as well, because you're deep into it as well. But just like something that pops out to me is that on that specifically, why does that logic need to be for an AI, an LLM, right? Why does it need to be some connected model? Why can't it just be some metadata? Like, why couldn't you just like write out some metadata or speak? Why couldn't you just capture that knowledge in some file somewhere or in a bunch of files? Like, why does it need to be this complex semantic model? Well, it seems like a complex semantic model. Like all of that logic, yes, will absolutely help the LLM, but why can't it just be written out? Why can't it just be stored in knowledge somewhere?
Maybe it can, right? I mean, I've become just in the last, honestly, like last 48 hours, like um, sort of like lighting up with the idea that programming is instructions you give a computer that can be run over and over again, written once and run over and again. And usually that programming takes the form of code. but I've been doing a lot of programming this weekend where the code is English. I'm not giving English to the LLM and having it translated into code for me. I'm giving English to the LLM and having it translated into English and store English as instructions on how to behave in the future, right?
Mm.
I have noticed though that periodically it forgets to follow one of those instructions. It just like decides to stop following it, right?
Mm.
Um, and if you take this and pair it with another one of my beliefs, and it's an educated opinion that I've come to, like when Brian and I discovered recently just how small context windows are, um,
Mm.
like a structured database of information is always going to be too large for the context window of these things. You're never going to let the LLM directly run its fingers through the data. Like you've seen it, both of you, right? Like when you run a Power BI query against a very sophisticated model with large data volumes, like the CPU is bored. It flickers for a moment, and when it flickers, it's like one of the cores, you know.
Yeah.
That was always
Uh,
so impressive
yeah,
how fast
it's
that was.
it's just not even working that hard, right?
Mm.
Um, Whereas like the GPU under my desk, I had to get a different uninterruptible power supply, another UPS, because when I hit a certain point in a certain game, I'd be drawing more than 300 watts, which was the rated limit of my UPS. Like my GPU was chewing 300 watts, whereas a single core on a CPU chews at full utilization, you choose like 5 to 10 watts, and Power BI uses that for like half a second tops. So
Mm. Mm.
the these CPU based query engines like Vertipack, like SQL, like whatever the bajillion query engines that exist over the top of data lakes, those are, I think, the state of the art. Like that's as best as humans can do, best as humanity can do in terms of query performance. So even just in terms of power cost, we're going to be some things like Vertipack are still going to exist. We're not like LLMs aren't going to directly query the contents like all that sea of data. They're going to author a DAX query or a whatever query, and that engine's going to run it. And it better provide the same answer every time to the same question when that comes up. Um,
Mm.
and I think once you get into how chewy, like when you really get into a DAX measure, like it's not the math that's complicated, right? It's the exceptions and the if thens and but like don't count this and keep that in and all that kind of stuff. Like that's the stuff that starts to get complicated, which by the way is actually very difficult to describe in a paragraph.
Mm.
And I think if you describe it in a paragraph and then let an LLM interpret it, you're going to get like that drift in terms of its interpretation that we've all seen. Like I see it, my stuff sometimes forgetting to just follow like a really simple instruction, like before you write to this database, always ask me if the category you're putting under is the one I agree with. Like I have that
Mm.
in this stored instructions for this thing I've been working on, Brian. And like last night, I just went ahead and wrote to the database and like I'm like, dude, told you, you've got to ask me. Right?
Yeah.
Well, it depends where it is in the context window, because that's one thing I've learned is that how
Yeah.
smart an LM is depends partially in terms of how much context you've burned.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
Maybe I was getting to the end of my context window in Claude at the time, and the poor thing was just getting tired. Like it was like, teacher, can I be excused? My brain is full. Like it could be stuff like that, and like, um, so I honestly don't think there's going to be much advantage in writing that kind of what we think of as DAX measures. I don't think there's going to be much advantage of writing it in English. I think code is really what we want in that case. Uh, I might use the LLM to help me write the code, and then I verify that the code is correct, and then I trust the code from that point forward. But the code's gonna execute far more efficiently, just in terms of power cost and speed and response time, as well as unambiguously deterministically. And so when it comes to structured data, like I think these semantic models, whichever vendor they're from. I think these semantic models are necessary, and I also think that they're here to stay. That's my take based on what I'm seeing today. Something brand new
Mm.
could happen tomorrow, I'm sure, but um,
That's good. It's good too. I'm interested because Brian, what's some of your counter arguments to that, and or do you have any counter arguments to that, and what else are you potentially seeing?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I totally agree with Rob that you've got to have a deterministic model that reflects your business processes and understanding. And the question is, can you kind of build that on the fly? And I think this is where we may differ much more than kind of conceptually in terms of
mhm,
agreeing that the semantic model is critical. And I think this is where my thinking has evolved in working with LLMs dramatically. Because Sam, when you and I first started these Vibecasts, I was all about like LLMs are not reliable enough and consistent enough to do this sort of work. And this whole agent thing is going to fail because even if they're 90% reliable, multiplied over repeated tasks, that's an unacceptable failure rate. And I was really hard over on that, and it's now shaping up to be one of my worst takes, along with Netflix getting rid of the red envelopes is their doom.
that's it. Yeah,
Um,
they're screwed.
yeah, and what I've realized is that through smart engineering, and a lot of it is work that's already been done over the last 10, 20 years, you the goal is not to necessarily build smarter and smarter AI. It's to turn AI from something that needs to be incredibly smart into basically your corner traffic cop.
Hmm.
And just basically kind of waving this lane on, telling this lane to stop, and it can do that, oh, almost perfectly. Even the non-frontier models, some of the things like Flash 2.5, it calls tools beautifully. And if you basically build your deterministic layer as kind of parameterized code, and then the AI becomes the thing that kind of that
Yeah.
translates between that
Mm.
parameterized code and me sitting there as a decision maker, just spewing natural language business questions at it.
Mm.
And the AI is saying, okay, I've got, this snippet over here. I've got this, approved code over here. I can piece these all together, call these tools, and boom, that is now something that can be a semantic model. And I think, I mean, it's
Mm.
really interesting because when I saw the announcement of Plotly Studio, I'm like, those guys get it. Like that's the way this is going to get solved. And
Mm.
the interesting thing is I just got access to it this weekend and I just started playing with it, but it does exactly what I thought it was going to do, which is it takes the Plotly package, which they've got enormous experience and data on. And what it actually does, it's really interesting. When you put in your natural language, it first breaks it down into an outline. And what it's doing is if you look at, I can even put it up on screen and show you. What it's
Mm.
doing is it's breaking it down into things it knows. And it's then kind of piecing those things it knows together and coming back with an answer. And so you really have to you have to travel much less distance to get to that deterministic model than the AI kind of starting from scratch. And
Mm.
the same thing I've seen, Sam, you got me hooked on Supabase. And
Mm.
when I now throw my data into Supabase and say, okay, here's my data analysis plan, you tell me what the structure should be. I'll be damned if every time it doesn't come back and say, okay, and partially this is because I've been conditioned by Power BI that I I I make my data analysis plans kind of mentally fit a star schema. So when I give it a data analysis plan, it says, "Oh, this works perfectly in star schema," and it said,
Mhm.
let me rearrange it for you. Let me build that model for you, and we can take a look at it." And so I think I'm getting to much the same place Rob is, but I'm kind of building that semantic model on the fly, and it's not a PBIX or a Tyndall format, but it's something that I can say, okay, at the end of this analysis, spit out the the um, the entity diagram in Markdown and spit out the code you've used to answer my questions. And to me, that's the equivalent of a semantic model. I don't know if you'd
Mm.
agree with that.
Well, it depends on how good of a test it is. You know, like you got to be really careful. And I don't know without looking at the data set that you're dealing with. I don't know how to grade it on this scale. But like take that Tableau MCP server blog post that we both read. I read it because you linked to it. Right? Like um, it's a it was a pretty breathless sort of experience reading that blog post about how awesome it was to use Claude against Tableau server. Um, but then like the skeptical parts of my brain, spider sense, started tingling, and I started looking a little deeper, and I started realizing that there wasn't anything going on there at all that was, in my opinion, that was all that fancy. Like the that blogger started with a data set that was one wide table in CSV that he downloaded from I forget where, but and the every interesting metric that he was interested in asking about was already in there as a column, and it was a well-named column, um, and it was suited to a single table analysis. It was just like a list of players. It was all it was. It was just a list of soccer players, right? And wasn't a list of teams. It didn't have games in it. It just had players and their statistics. That's all it was. So it was like almost like in our Power BI world, it'd be like one of the world's richest dimension tables, right? And that's all it was. And every column of interest had already been calculated and named, and it was just in there. So all the semantics that he possibly could have had were already there because he wasn't trying to do anything like, I mean, imagine tracking players as they change between teams and their varying performance as they change between teams. Like suddenly that's like starting to resemble more of a business problem, right? Um, and Tableau server, all it did was expose essentially a SQL interface over the top of that CSV file that then he could query from Claude, and he was drawing charts in Claude. They weren't Tableau charts, right? So you can come away from that experience with the false impression that a semantic model isn't going to be all that helpful. Well, if you look a little closer, you're like, actually, he was benefiting from a tremendous amount of semantic knowledge, and it wasn't that complicated of a problem to begin with. And so, like, like if we wanted to, um, for a different test, like let's start with the fact tables and the dimension tables in my hockey model, strip out all of the calculated columns that I added, strip out all of the measures and obviously no relationships, and then start asking it questions like, you know, um, uh, who's won the most games all time, you know, and is it going to pick up on the fact that there's two fact tables, one of which is more detailed from the modern era, and there's another fact table which stores like the historical all-time totals from before they started keeping stats in a more detailed way? Is it going to pick up on the fact that it needs to add both of those together? You know, like
Mm.
maybe, maybe not, right? And so like like the what I have found is like when people ask me like what I do for a living and I tell them about this stuff and everything, like they start to like see like the hangover equation gif, like calculus and everything like that. I'm like, no, no, no. The math never gets above like fifth or sixth grade level. It's not the math. It's dealing with the logic of what should count,
Mm.
right? Like what under what circumstances does a row of data or a column of data should it be counted or not counted? And the logic of that is sometimes incredibly nuanced.
Yeah.
And like, so for me, the real test is going to be um, whether it can sort of a from scratch LLM view of raw tables um, deliver on that kind of thing.
Mm.
And I suspect that if it does deliver, it's going to deliver by asking me all kinds of clarifying questions
Yeah.
and encoding my answers in something other than English.
Agreed.
I think we all agree by what everyone said is that you're going to have extensive business logic against any type of AI analytics. There's no doubt. There is no future that I mean, I wouldn't count it out, but there's no future where the LLMs are actually reaching down into the data and evaluating the data. The LLMs are like your traffic controller, like Brian is saying.
Yeah,
They're going to use tools that will create the SQL. And that SQL is what will run, or that DAX is what will run over the data set. Like and then they're going to call a tool to generate the chart, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you know, Rob, but I've been deep into the app development world lately. Like this has sort of been my own personal evolution over the last like 9 months. What's going on in that space in the last month is insane. It's insane. Like that is what Claude Code, if you've heard of that, is that's what it's doing. That's what it's doing. It is not it is controlling the front end code files. It is controlling the back end database, all by directing traffic, basically. It takes your request, it draws up a massive plan. If it needs to, sometimes it doesn't need to do a big plan. Sometimes it'll be short, but it will create a plan and then it will progressively step through that plan, calling the tools that it needs to gather all the context it needs to actually create the right changes in your code base ultimately, or in your database. And that's very recent. It's only like the last month or so that I've actually seen it. This is sort of my viewpoints on agents and the agentic future has sort of really rapidly changed in the last month after seeing this. Because not only does it do it once, you can call four of these at the same time, and it's just doing these massive plans and iterating through them, and it's doing them all together. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. That to me feels like it's going to start edging into the data world. Like this is kind of the sense that I get because it's
hmm
not that different. I mean, it already can control the database effectively from within Claude Code. I'm already controlling
hmm
everything in Superbase within Claude Code. I'm hardly going to Superbase actually. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
um, so to then move that, evolve that into some data analytics client that then creates the charts for you after the SQL is run and the subset of data is created. It doesn't feel like it's that far on now. Like it doesn't feel like that is too much harder than what I'm already seeing is being done. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I think we're actually we kind of agree. It's just maybe, and this is a debate that Brian and I have had. Like, who wins? Where's the value? Like, who actually gets the value out of all this? Like, where does the um? Yeah, it's hard to know. It's hard. I don't know actually. I don't.
I mean,
Compute.
like,
The Nvidia wins. Nvidia wins for sure.
Yes.
oh yeah, yeah.
Microsoft Azure wins. AWS wins. Google Cloud wins. Like those guys definitely win. But in terms of
If you own computer, you're selling shovels, you win.
they definitely win.
Yeah.
No doubt. It's just past that point. Past that point. Like, you know.
I, I have a friend who I used to work with who has now ended up working for Microsoft Real Estate, and his job is about as safe as it gets because that's the wing that's building all the data centers, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if it were building offices, well, I mean, why do we need you? I mean, I've been over there. Like, only the upper echelon leaders go to the office anymore at Microsoft. Microsoft is really kind of empty except for leadership.
Wow.
Um, like they're work from home and they're not, as far as of today, they're not making any attempt to bring people back like Amazon, etc.
Mm.
Uh, why did I get to go down that road?
Is
I
that,
forget.
is that a sign of something something greater? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Oh no, I was just saying like, okay, right, because like my friend is in commercial real estate at Microsoft.
Yeah,
If they weren't building data centers, he'd have nothing to do, right? They don't need to build any buildings. If anything, they need to be
yeah.
like finding someone to buy some of their commercial real estate, like their office real estate.
Mm.
But yeah, data centers, booming business. Yeah.
Did you see
I
did on that point, did you see where Meta proposed they've got proposed to build two data centers, one in Louisiana, one in Ohio, that are three-quarters the footprint of Manhattan?
yeah, I hadn't heard
I
of that.
mean, the scope of the data center, resources is
I
unbelievable.
I heard
I
this
was watching.
crazy stat. I heard this crazy stat on another podcast that they believe that there's a requirement today and over the next couple of years for 10,000 times the amount of compute that we have today. 10,000 times. And when you see these agents working, it doesn't feel like too unrealistic. It honestly doesn't. Because where we were historically talking, like just talking to ChatGPT and you'd ask one question, get one answer, that is slow compared to just spinning up agents. And you could have four, like I've had four going for weeks now, like when I'm developing something, but I could have more if I could think of more things to do, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
We're bottlenecking on you. You
the human
primitive
is the
human.
bottleneck.
Yeah, right. Like how many
Yeah.
channels do you have, right? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, insufficient cores.
Well, it's really interesting what you were saying, Sam. I find one of the most interesting data sets is if you go into Open Router and you look at the weekly, monthly, and yearly totals of what are where people are burning tokens.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not representative of the entire world, because it's like it's basically, analytics and programming nerds, who use Open Router. But
Yeah.
the interesting thing is that Anthropic, this week alone, 330 billion tokens, you know, and when you look at that's like 15 times what the OpenAI volume is, and so it
And I bet you that's
shows
all code, multi-agents, exactly what I'm doing. It's
exactly, exactly.
also in the last 6 months, I think they've gone from 1 billion revenue to four. So in 6 months, they've added um, four times the amount of revenue in 6 months and on billions of dollars. And it's all because multi-agent, you're just chewing through tokens four times faster, five times faster because of this like
Yeah.
multi-agent planning that they're doing. It's
Hmm.
crazy. It's
That's
really
why I
It's
have
interesting.
the
like,
Anthropic background up today because I kind of feel like they deserve the shout out for winning the month so far because I think Claude Code is just dramatically changing the horse race here.
well, I'm really trying to keep up with y'all, like, look, I remember Brian, like 2 weeks ago, watching you using Claude Desktop and thinking, oh man, like he keeps changing tools and like I'm never gonna keep up with all this. And so like this weekend, I got really, really into Cloud Desktop and MCP, and my brain just expanded by like leaps and bounds. And I show up on Monday, and you're like, "Yeah, I've moved on to root code."
But
That's
but
so 15 minutes ago, and now I'm hearing about Cloud Code, which I'm not even using yet. And so, well, God, I got my homework now.
when
Gotta
I
go
saw
play
you
with
sending
that.
messages to me at 3:30 at night, I was like, oh, he's become one of us now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when my wife gave me that window, she went out with her friends and claimed she was gonna be home by 10:30. It was more like 12:30, and yeah, I was a different person when she got home than the person she left. There was that much of a difference in terms of like what I understood and what I could do.